I think Teofimo against Haney is a, like a pay-per-view level kind of fight that would attract a huge amount of attention.
This is Jonathan Aguilar here for Pro Boxing Fans, joined by Dan Rafael over Zoom. Dan, obviously a few fights last night. Let's start with Taylor and Lopez. Brilliant performance from Teofimo Lopez, two-weight world champion. What was your assessment of what happened in New York last night?
I thought what happened in New York was that Teofimo Lopez really proved a lot of people wrong. A lot of people doubted him, and for good reason. I mean, I don't. It's one thing for the boxer, any boxer, not just Teofimo Lopez, to beat their chest and said, "I proved you wrong," and that's fine, that's fair. But there's also the notion that there's a reason why you proved us wrong, because your performance in previous fights made people think that you weren't up to the task. So good for Teofimo for being able to prove us wrong, because in his two fights at 140 pounds against Pedro Campa looked okay. The fight after that in December against Sandor Martin looked terrible. He'll admit that. Got knocked down. And if you go back to his final fight when he was lightweight champion, when he lost the titles, he put on a very gallant and brave performance against Kambosos, but still lost the fight. So there was a lot of reasons to not necessarily believe that Teofimo could do what he did on Saturday night, which was to win, and not just win, like barely win or eke it out or controversial. No, he took the fight to the champion who was undefeated, and he beat him clean. And I mean, the two cards that were 7-5, in my opinion, were very unconscionable. That means you have two judges change round 12 to Taylor's round, and it winds up to be a draw, which would have been, instead of us talking about a great performance and a great event, we'd be discussing one of the great controversies and terrible scores in the history of boxing.
So how did you have the fight, and what would be a fair score?
Well, I always look at it like this. There's what I scored it, or what any individual scores it, and then there's what I believe to be the range of acceptable scores. So I'm not saying that your score, my score, somebody else's score is wrong. To me, it's, does it fit within the range of what seems to be acceptable? I scored the fight. Obviously, I was watching the broadcast, was not able to make it to New York for this one, but I scored the fight 10 rounds to 2 in favor of Teofimo Lopez, 118 to 110. To me, the range of acceptable scores would have been anywhere from 10 rounds to 2 up to maybe 8 rounds to 4. So maybe 9 rounds to 3 in the middle, of course. So that means if you didn't give Taylor more than, if you only gave him 1 round, you didn't see the couple of rounds that he probably did win. And if you gave him more than 4 rounds, you were way overestimating his abilities in the fight. And listen, even Josh Taylor in his post-fight comments, I mean, he knew he lost the fight. He said he thought it was maybe closer than 117 to 111. But I don't think if you really dug down deep in his heart, he'd tell you it was 7-5. He won probably like one of the first 2 or 3 rounds. I think the third round was the one I thought, or the first round actually, which is what I thought he won. And then it felt like Teofimo really wasn't so much because Josh did anything spectacular, more because I think Teofimo may have just backed off a little bit, take a little breather. Maybe he was getting a little fatigued, maybe took off sort of the 10th round, and Josh was able to do a little more in that round. And frankly, there wasn't even a lot of rounds. Sometimes you have a fight that seems awfully competitive on the cards, and you have a bunch of scores on your piece of paper that you look at and you think, okay, maybe they could go either way. But I felt like this was actually a pretty easy fight to score. There was not a lot of marks on my sheet where I'm like, this is a close round and you can go either way. I thought the rounds that Teofimo was winning were very, very clear. And there wasn't a lot of those rounds to give to Josh Taylor, but it was a great performance from Lopez. This was the 2020, 2019 vintage of him when he was on the rise, when he knocked out Richard Comey, when of course he had the victory against Vasily Lomachenko. I mean, if this Teofimo Lopez can continue to have that kind of focus when the bell rings, stick to the plan, show a lot of facets of his game. He didn't just go there to brawl. He didn't just go there to box. He really was able to put it all together. He punched, he stalked, he countered. His hands were quick, his feet were quick, and he was in a good frame of mind. And he didn't take a lot of incoming. His defense was sound. Thought he fought a great fight.
People online have obviously talking as well about Josh Taylor's performance, a second performance in a row where he hasn't been at the level he was at when he was undisputed champion. Some people have suggested maybe too many trainers in such a short period of time and a lack of ring activity. What do you think went wrong for Josh?
Well, he was the first to say when asked that he did not blame the lack of activity at all. So I'll give Josh Taylor a lot of credit. He didn't make a single excuse. He did nothing but say the better man won tonight. He gave Teofimo Lopez credit. He did say he'd like a rematch. I mean, that might have been a little bravado because I think he and Lopez and everybody knows that's probably unlikely, certainly in the next fight. So, if he says it wasn't the lack of activity, I'm not going to argue with him. It's never good for trainers and fighters to switch constantly. And as you mentioned, he's had now a few different trainers over the last few fights. You don't have that cohesiveness. But he's also a guy with a lot of experience. He may only have had now, 20 professional fights, but he fought a lot of quality fighters. He had a big amateur career. So it's not like he doesn't know what he's doing. So when the bell rings, you should still be able to fall back on the things you've learned and the things you've done for all these years. So while I don't think it's a good thing for a fighter to have that many trainer changes in a short period of time, I don't think I could say that's the reason why he didn't win the fight. He just got outfought. That's the bottom line. He wasn't as active as Teofimo Lopez. He didn't land as many punches as Teofimo Lopez. His body language was terrible in the fight. I'm not saying that is necessarily meaningful, but if you're a judge and you're watching the two guys in front of you, and one guy has got snap on his shots and is coming forward and has a swagger and looks like he's winning the fight, and the other guy just looks like he doesn't want to be there, chances are you're gonna be noticing that, and it's gonna go to the guy that looks like he wants to be there, that's doing the work. I mean, and the stats speak for themselves. Again, I'm not telling you that CompuBox is the end all be all, but the stats don't lie in many respects, and the number of punches that Teofimo Lopez landed and what he threw overwhelmingly were larger and greater than what the Josh Taylor was. Matter of fact, it was after like round 2, Teofimo Lopez limited Josh Taylor to single-digit connects in every single round. That's not going to get the job done unless one of those connects knocks the man out or knocks him down a couple of times, and that did not happen. So, Josh, as he said, he gave it his best effort. He tried, but it wasn't his night. Teofimo had a great performance, and when the fight started, I got to tell you, Jonathan, I'm looking at these guys, and it was a stark difference in the size comparison between the two. Teofimo looked a lot smaller physically. It's one thing for them to stand on the scale on Friday afternoon and both be right around 140 pounds. And then you get into the ring on Saturday night, more than 24 hours after the weigh-in, and they look like they're in different weight classes. Josh Taylor was a lot taller, was a lot bigger, but the size did not matter in this case. Teofimo Lopez took it to him. Like I said, I just thought he fought a beautiful fight, and Josh Taylor didn't.
What's next for both? Teofimo told reporters right after the fight that he was considering retirement. He's got a legal battle to commence soon regarding his son. What would you believe is next for both?
Well, as far as Josh goes, he made the comment in his post-fight ring interview that while he would like a rematch, I think he realizes that is probably highly unlikely, and that he would probably look to go up to welterweight. He's been talking about that for a while. I suspect had he been the winner of the fight, he would have stuck around in the junior welterweight division, where there would have been the potential for some really big fights, perhaps a rematch with Jose Ramirez, perhaps if the undisputed lightweight champ Devin Haney decided to stay with Top Rank and move up one weight class. I mean, the point is he had a lot of options. Maybe they would try to make the Catterall rematch at some point, even though Jack has switched to a different promoter and different broadcaster. But I do think that when Josh comes back, he'll go to the welterweight division and try to make a run there. And, hopefully he can do that. Good luck to him. I mean, I don't get too freaked out because he lost a decision to another really good fighter. So I think that Josh Taylor, if he decides that he wants to go on and put the work in, I don't see any reason why he can't have a good career going forward and, become a world champion again at 147 pounds. There's good fights for him. As far as Teofimo Lopez, I mean, I can appreciate the emotion of the moment. He does have this very bitter custody fight with for his son. He's in the process of divorcing his wife. That's never, a good thing. I mean, those things get ugly. He's got to take care of that. But anybody that thinks that Teofimo Lopez is retiring at age 24, I believe it is, or 25, having just won the junior welterweight world title and with some major paydays and major fights in his future, if you really think he's retired, then you've never watched or covered or read about boxing. I mean, guys say that shit all the time, and Teofimo Lopez is not retiring. I can guarantee you that. So when he does get through his legal situation with his soon-to-be ex-wife and his child, and I wish him the best of luck with that, obviously. there's going to be a lot of options. Some of the same ones that I just mentioned that could have been the case for Taylor. There's attractive fights. I mean, Jose Ramirez was ringside. He's the former unified champion. They're both with Top Rank. That's a very good fight. A real interesting matchup. Two quality guys, two championship level fighters, two guys who are Olympians, two guys with great backgrounds, similar in age. I mean, that's a high class fight, number one. And I think that's a fight that could definitely be made. The same thing goes if Devin Haney decides to stick around with Top Rank and decides he wants to vacate the titles, or even if he wants to just take the shot and go up to 140 to challenge for Lopez's titles. That's a big fight. I mean, all due respect to the Ramirez fight, which I think is a tremendous event. When you talk about Teofimo Lopez against Devin Haney, especially based on the kind of gate that Devin Haney drew in the fight with Lomachenko, I think pay-per-view numbers that were, while not spectacular, were solid for that fight. I think Teofimo against Haney is like a pay-per-view level kind of fight that would attract a huge amount of attention. So those are two options I think are out there for Teofimo Lopez. I don't know if the other unifications are necessarily makeable at this moment. I mean, Regis Prograis just signed with Matchroom. He's got his own calendar that seems to be set up nicely for him going forward, starting with this fight against Sergiy coming up. So I don't know about that. Subriel Matias is, not the most known guy, even though he's a very dangerous puncher and a very good fighter. I'm not really sure what his status is. There's been conversations that, he may leave PBC, but it feels like he's going to stick with PBC. Point is, there's no obvious unification. It feels like the best options for Lopez are going to be either Ramirez within the Top Rank stable or with Haney if Haney sticks around with Top Rank. And those are, as good as fights would be against, say, the other champions. I think that the Ramirez fights or the Ramirez or Haney fight would be the really attractive and most interesting, and probably from a commercial point of view, the most successful.
Definitely. And a fight that I didn't actually get to see, but I'm sure fans would like to know your opinion on the Munguia Derevyanchenko fight. What I've heard is that it was a difficult fight for Munguia, and he basically needed that knockdown in the final round to win. Did you manage to see it? And if so, what actually happened?
Well, I did see it. Because of the timing of the Top Rank card and the Golden Boy card, I was able to watch, I believe it was the first 9 rounds complete of Munguia against Derevyanchenko. Then what I felt was the more important fight that I needed to pay attention to, that I was going to be writing about on Deadline, was the Teofimo Lopez Josh Taylor fight. So I stopped watching after round 9 and I commenced watching the other fight. I knew the result of the fight because I did click back over. I had 2 browsers open on my screen, so I saw when they announced the scores. It was actually kind of between rounds, actually, of the other fight, which made it nice. In any event, yes, a couple things. Munguia versus Derevyanchenko, 100% going to be in the fight of the year conversation. I don't care what happens between now and the end of the year. An absolutely sensational fight, just a blazing action, back and forth. Both guys were in trouble. Both guys were on the verge of wins. Both were on the verge of losses. Round 5, maybe round of the year, you had Munguia was out. I thought the fight was over, done. Derevyanchenko was going to stop him, and he came back and hurt Derevyanchenko. I mean, it was just wild shit. A great fight. I kind of felt like that was going to be the way the fight was when it was made. I mean, I said on the podcast that I'm part of in the preview leading into this that I said to my partner TJ Reeves, I said, listen, I think when we come back late Sunday and we're recapping the weekend, I think we're going to be talking about Munguia and Sergiy Derevyanchenko as the fight of the week. And I think that, all due respect to the great Teofimo Lopez performance, it wasn't a great fight. It was a good fight, but it wasn't like fight of the year. Sonny Edwards had a big win. Wasn't fight of the year. Munguia against Derevyanchenko, that's a real bona fide fight of the year contender without question. And in fact, he did need the 12th round knockdown, because if he doesn't get the knockdown in round 12, Derevyanchenko it winds up being a draw. So that that knockdown was the difference in terms of the way the outcome was. So you got to feel bad though for Derevyanchenko. This is a guy who's been in some tremendous battles over the years. He's now got 5 losses, all to good opponents, all by very close decisions. The only one loss in there that was like a real, true, clear, you lost the fight, even though it was highly competitive. He lost when he challenged Charlo for his WBC middleweight title. But the other 4 losses he had, a majority decision to Carlos Adames, who went on to win an interim title at middleweight, a split decision against Danny Jacobs in a vacant middleweight title fight, A fight against then champion Gennady Golovkin at middleweight, a fight I was at that I thought that, and I wasn't alone, I thought Derevyanchenko won the fight on my scorecard, and many people had him winning the fight. I mentioned the Charlo fight, and then you have the Munguia fight that we just saw, another super close fight that certainly could have gone the other way. This guy just, you got to figure the odds would be he'd get at least one of those decisions. He didn't get any of them, so you kind of feel bad for him, but he had nothing to be ashamed of. The guy, like I said, he got 5 losses now, all by decision, all really close, all against the top guys in and around his weight class. And it's a hard luck loss, but he's got nothing to hang his head about. It was an awesome fight. It was a great fight. And a matter of fact, when we get done with this, because I'm going to be writing something more on that, I'm going to actually go back and watch a few of those rounds because it was absolutely sensational. So if people are not watching it live, I would 100% encourage them to seek out the replay and check it out, because it was, it was a great fight. And by the way, Jonathan, this is one of those years where there's a whole slew of great fights and top candidates for the honors. It's going to be hard to cut it down, but I have to say, when it's all said and done, we start hitting that fall, December, when you're talking about making your list for fights of the year and voting on them in like the Boxing Writers Association of America, that sort of thing. I'd be shocked if Munguia and Derevyanchenko wasn't at least on the ballot, if not maybe the outright winner, depending on what else happens.
Well, I've got some spare time today, so I'll definitely be opening DAZN.
Absolutely.
Dan, always a pleasure to catch up with you. This Zoom's about to end, so appreciate your time, and I'll leave a link in the description to both your newsletter and your podcast, I believe, Big Fight Weekend.
Yes, sir.
And appreciate your time as always. Thank you.
All right, you bet, Jonathan. Enjoy your stay in New York City, my man.
Appreciate it.